Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 100.
The real power behind special needs homeschoolers are the parents that make it up. They've taken the responsibility for the ultimate outcome of their children upon themselves, and they've really been able to accomplish some fantastic things.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Mary Fratianni. Mary is a Love at Education Home Special Needs Coordinator. She's been supporting homeschoolers with special needs students in New York for over 12 years. She's also a chapter lead of parents, including Challenged Children, which is PICC. Is that PICC and LEAH?
Yeah, it's Parents Instructing Challenged Children, LEAH. It is the special needs support wing of New York State Loving Education at Home.
Okay, and they provide special needs services and support for over 150 homeschool families with over 175 special needs students in New York. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I've known a lot of people that haven't homeschooled their children with special needs because they don't feel like, they can take on that big of a challenge. And so I'm really hoping that you'll help us change that paradigm about what's possible and what's available. So why don't you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I've been supporting the homeschool community here in New York for well over 12 years. I started homeschooling back in 2000. I had a child with a very rare brain tumor, and that actually had led us into homeschooling. He had received a full plate of therapies through our state's early intervention system, and he had shown little to no progress with a full plate of therapies. He had global delays. He had a brain tumor. He was completely nonverbal at age 4.5. And it was this lack of progress that led us to work with an outside educational consultant who did a neurodevelopmental program. And through that program, there were certain therapies, some consider outside modalities, that they recommended for our child. And we started doing those at home. And we, a week later, went to meet with our son's speech therapist at a special ed preschool. As we were having a conversation with this particular therapist and we're mentioning some of these programs that we were doing, she got all excited and told us how they were going to benefit our child. And we turned around and said, if these programs were going to be very beneficial to our child, and helping him to be actually able to speak, why didn't you bring this up to us prior?
Yeah, that's frustrating.
And she said her job prevented her from doing that because if they make recommendations to one set of parents, they have to make them to everyone, and the parents expect the county and the school district to pay for them. And so I said, then it behooves the system to keep the children broken. And she nodded her head and she sadly said yes. Fast forward, that particular therapist worked with us privately for almost 2 years after our son left the special ed preschool. It became very apparent to us very early on that if our child was going to be able to function in society, be able to walk, talk, read, write, and be a contributing member, that there is no way that we were going to be able to put his needs in the hands of the so-called professionals. And we did continue to receive services through our school district. And in New York, there is a provision in our homeschool regulation that allows homeschoolers to access school district services. We not only use those school district services, but we continued working with our neurodevelopmental company for 12 years. And had we not done a home program and homeschooled, our child would not be where he is today. And so it was not only through the on-the-job experience with that, as well as other, education that I pursued along the way that has allowed me to be able to help support homeschoolers in New York State through this ministry.
That's great. So what kind of things did you do with your son that helped him improve improve so much?
Well, one of the key things, and I think it's very important when parents have special needs children, whether the child is, at a very young age prior to entering the public schools, let's just say anywhere between 3 and 5 years old, or even those who are in the system right now and are considering pulling them because there's lack of progress or there's a lot of bad things going on. The decision to homeschool is not an individual decision. It is a family decision. And it's extremely important if you've got a lot of complex issues. Let's just say you've got a child who's minimally verbal, who has oral motor problems, a child who's got, let's say, cerebral palsy and's got major motor problems. It is really critically important that parents seek out professionals to work with them who are willing to work with them privately, because when you're dealing with therapists employed through a school district, they have one focus. That is Common Core assessment testing.
And how do you
getting the kids to be able to use the computers. When you're dealing with a private therapist, your major concern is looking at the child and what is the child's functional level, and then figuring out, okay, where are the holes in their foundation? What do we need to do to get them to the next level? And if a parent has a child, let's just say with major speech language issues, and I'm going to use my son as a perfect example. He had a seizure that knocked out his tongue movement. He couldn't move his tongue. We had to rebuild that motor pathway if he was going to ever have any hope to be able to speak. We did that through specific activities that our consultant gave us. They're individualized to the child based upon that individual child's needs. That is not something that you're going to get within the public school system. And so, it's very important what we did. It is an extremely large time commitment that a parent has to put in. But at the end of the day, if the kids could fix themselves, they would, but they can't. And it's the parent alone that has a vested interest in the outcome. They don't collect a paycheck at the end of the week and pass go. If their child is having a breakdown, they don't just write a progress note and pop it in the file. They've got to deal with it. And I truly feel that, and I've worked with hundreds of parents over the years, and I have seen kids who couldn't read start to read. Kids who had such horrible anxiety when their parents pulled them out of the public school system, they would literally shut down the minute the parent asked them to write a paragraph. And it's taken months, but with lots of love and lots of care and literally getting down at the child's level, incredible changes happen.
That's great. Well, and do you want to tell us what you feel like some of the disadvantages for that Common Core test assessment? I mean, some people that don't have special needs don't really understand what you're trying to deal with when you're dealing with a public school. I love how you talked about, they just pop a note in their file, but you as a parent, you have to deal with it. And I think you learn how to help the child a little better when you have to deal with it instead of just taking a note. Just tell us some of the problems that you've seen coming out of that.
First of all, one thing for a lot of people to understand, Common Core is it's a set of standards. It's math, language arts, where they're saying the kids need to know this by this and this by that. And really, it's almost a reworking of language that was already there. The way the system has worked prior, it still doesn't work now. When you're dealing with children with special needs, they each learn a different way. And the problem that we have when you're taking a set of standards saying everyone has to be a cookie cutter kid, which is really what was happening before that. Yeah. You can't do that with kids with special needs. And I like to share this one story because this was mind-blowing. Now, I am not a New York State certified public school teacher. I am not a New York State certified special education teacher. I bring with me to the table a bachelor's degree. I bring to the table now close to 14 years of homeschool experience working with a child with significant special needs, as well as standalone certifications in child brain development. I am a certified provider of the listening program, certified provider of the Moyer's Learning Ears program, and also have a certification in the test of auditory and visual skills. But when a number of years ago, I had a New York State certified special education teacher come to me at a homeschool convention and ask me how to homeschool her autistic son.
That's interesting.
And I had to do a double take because I said to myself, what is wrong with this picture? I have a person who has gotten their master's degree, is getting continuing education every single year. She is working in the trenches with special needs children. She has one herself, and she does not know where to start with her autistic son.
Something's really messed up with their training.
I'm lost for words. But what I can say on this is this woman was a wonderful woman, and she could write reports like it was nobody's business. But when it came to looking at her child at his functional level and getting into his world, that is not something that this individual was capable of doing at that point. She learned how to write reports. She learned how to read manuals, but she didn't know how to get into a child's world. That is something that a parent and only a parent can do. And that's why first thing when parents start pulling their children and they're like, where do we start? What do we do? Well, the first thing a parent needs to really do is they need to assess what is their child's functional level. Where are they reading and comprehending? Because that's going to tell them where they're going to need to be looking to start in that area. And what are they capable of in understanding mathematics?
Well, and you said that they, special needs children, you have to kind of have a different approach with them. What are some of the different approaches that you use that work better with them versus like a traditional type student?
Well, first of all, one of the things is that parents have to really assess when they first bring their kids home is, how does their child learn best? Are they an auditory learner? Are they a visual learner? Are they a hands-on learner? Or are they a combination of all of those three things?
That's probably pretty critical for a special needs child.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I find is when parents are coming to me is I've got a lot of kids who have auditory processing problems. They have sound sensitivity issues. They have terrible spelling. They're just major issues. Most of the issues the kids are having are with auditory processing. However, there are some kids who also have visual processing issues. And we're not talking about kids that can't read an art chart across the room. We're talking about kids who have tracking issues, left-right tracking issues when they're reading. And so it's very important that they understand how their child learns best. And a lot of times when we've got kids who've got auditory processing problems, they're stronger visually. So the thing is that parents need to use that stronger system to input the information while at the same time remediating the weaker system. And so various different approaches, especially if you've got a child who's got auditory processing problems, you're going to have a lot of problems trying to teach phonics. And you're especially going to have a problem when you've got a child who's minimally verbal or has issues with speech articulation. So, well, what do? You need to take a whole word approach and you need to be using lots of visuals. And that's something that we help parents with. The other thing is to also find curriculum that is going to light their fire, because a lot of these kids have problems separating the fluff and puff that you find in textbooks from the facts. When you're first starting homeschooling children with special needs, you already know what's wrong and you know that you've got a lot of stuff in front of you got to remediate. And you also have the burden from the system. You have to teach all these different subjects. So how do you get it all done? And one of the things is and I warn parents, don't go out and buy a grade level homeschool curriculum in a box your first year, because you're going to find usually after the first 3 weeks, it doesn't work.
And what is it like trying to pull your children out of the public system to homeschool them? What's the legal ramifications and all of that?
First of all, in New York State, it is legal to homeschool. And so we've got a number of school districts who have, in an effort to intimidate parents, told them that they were not qualified to homeschool.
Oh, that's interesting.
or they're not allowed to. And after the fact, the parent will poke around and they'll ask the question, my school district says I'm not allowed to homeschool. And our response is, yeah, you're allowed to homeschool, and probably you'll educate your child far better than they will. Yeah.
Like you said, they already know them. They know the problems that they're facing.
There is a homeschool regulation, which is Commissioner's Regulation 100.10, that is parents can access that through New York State Department of Education, or they can go to the LEAH website, which is www.leah.org. There are links on there that they can go over and read the homeschool law. It basically, tells the parents what the procedure is to follow in notifying the school district and submitting an individualized home instruction plan, and about required quarterly reporting as well as annual assessments that have to be done. One thing that's very important for parents with special needs to understand is you do not want to ever list your child at their actual chronological grade level if that's not where they're functioning. And that goes not just for New York State, but that goes for are every state in this country that requires homeschool reporting to their school districts. And the reason why you've got to be careful with that is if you list a child at a chronological grade level and they're not able to do the work at that grade level, then you can get yourself into a lot of trouble when it comes to annual assessment time if you're required to give your child a standardized test, because you're basically saying that your child is capable of doing a level of work they're not capable of doing. So we do advise parents that if they've got kids with really significant needs, number one, they become a member of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, hslda.org. And if they have any questions on grade placement, that they contact their special needs coordinators who can help them. And there are also many different assessments that are available through HSLDA. And then if you're in New York State, you're a homeschooler, we have various different assessments available through Parents Instructing Challenged Children, LEAH, that parents can check out of our lending library to help them get an idea of where their child is functioning.
Would you say there would be more threat of child protective services coming in if a parent with special needs doesn't correctly assess and monitor and everything and check in with the state like that? Is there more of a threat of that than
That's
traditional?
funny you asked that question, because it's hilarious when I think about it. We have parents, and I'm just going by the stories I've heard from parents here in New York State who've had their children in full-time public school placement who disagreed with their committees on special education. And just because the parent disagreed with what the special ed committee said, the school district called CPS on them.
Wow.
I mean, it's like, really? And no, here's the thing. The way I like to explain it to parents is this. Your school district is required by law to uphold their end of the law in educating the children. You as a homeschooler are required to uphold your end of the law. The one thing that a school district does not want, they do not want a parent to pull a child to homeschool them and then decide after a couple months or a couple years, this just isn't for me, and then throw the child back into the system in worse shape than they were when they left. And, everybody's heard those, horror stories, that every now and then will pop up on the news or whatever. Here's the thing. If a parent is pulling a child with significant special needs and the parent is not able to provide for the level of intervention that particular child needs therapeutically, in New York State, they have a means to get those services through their school district at no charge. Okay. There are many families who are on Medicaid waiver programs, and they can get services through those. They can also use, if they have private insurance, they can access certain therapies through that. Everybody's financial situation is different. There are families who do private pay. For child protective services, there have been school districts who have, just in retaliation to homeschoolers, called child protective services on them. But at the end of the day, unless the child is being neglected, there's nothing that they can do. If you have a parent who is educating that child in compliance with the state education department, and in New York State, all of our individualized home instruction plans have to be reviewed by the superintendent. The superintendent has to look at them versus the commissioner's regulation and determine whether or not they are in compliance. They do not approve them. They have to look to make sure that that instruction plan includes all of the subjects that are stipulated for that child's grade level as stated by the state education department. If that parent has got a valid home instruction plan and they're filing their quarterly paperwork and they're monitoring progress, they're good to go.
Okay. So basically just know your rights. That, don't just listen to what the public school is telling you. And then also just be sure you're doing what you say you're going to do. Basically.
Right. And we also, as I said, we strongly recommend that, especially if you've got a child with special needs, that you be a member of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, because we do have school districts in the state who are not very homeschool friendly. And a lot of times a school district will overstep their bounds. And one call to Homeschool Legal Defense Association is all it takes. If we've got homeschoolers being harassed, HSLDA, all they have to do is pick up the phone. And they have helped many a homeschooler in this state.
That's awesome. Great. So I want you to tell us a little bit more how you got involved with LEAH and then also what your services are with that association.
Okay, well, I started with LEAH soon after we started homeschooling, as I kind of inherited the name of the Region 10, which is our New York City, Long Island region special needs coordinator. I was the person who volunteered at the downstate conventions to help parents in answering their questions. Many years ago, before the time of internet, I would put together special needs resource packs for parents. Because one of the things in the homeschool conventions, there were not a whole lot of special needs vendors who came in. Because of that, that was a huge hole that needed to be filled. And so by providing these resource packs, it gave parents the ability to get a hold of resources that their school districts got a hold of. We're talking anything from occupational and physical therapy items, from scooter boards to pressure vests to sensory equipment to speech and language manuals. Anything that a homeschool parent with a special needs child could benefit from owning themselves in their own home to be able to do therapy at home. So that's how I started. And then flash forward through the years in 2008, or at the end of 2007, the family who had been running Parents Instructing Challenged Children retired, and they needed to hand this group off to somebody, and they'd asked me to take it. And after much prayer, and I had been a member of Parents Instructing Challenged Children myself, I decided to take it, but take it under New York State LEAH. Because I said, if something ever happened to me, I need to know that someone else is going to be able to pick up the reins and run with it. So that's sort of how I started with LEAH. In 2010, I became a certified provider of the listening program by Advanced Brain Technologies, and that's a therapeutic music listening program that's extremely helpful to children with a variety of different issues, from auditory processing to sensory to attention. And I started offering that service to LEAH members. Actually, New York State LEAH has a site license for the listening program, so we're able to offer that through our lending library to LEAH members, which is a huge help to parents who are financially strained. We also provide Learning Ears program by Moyer's Learning Systems. Now, that's an add-on curriculum program to the listening program that helps, again, children with auditory processing issues, as well as kids who have speech and language problems. It can be extremely helpful for children who have articulation problems. We've taken kids who could not read through that program who are now reading.
That's great.
Kids who were 2 or 3 years behind in comprehension and gotten them up to grade level. We've taken kids who were minimally verbal and now they're talking. One of the other things that we offer is a formal screening test called the Test of Auditory and Visual Skills. The great thing about that is, we've got a lot of families who have been longtime homeschoolers, and they may have a whole fleet of kids, and they may find out that little Susie or little Johnny's just not keeping up with their siblings. They know something's not right, but they're not sure, and they, for whatever reason, don't want to go through their school district to get testing done, don't have the ability for whatever reason to go out and get formal testing through a private person. So by having their child have this formal screening, it basically can confirm to the parent, yes, Houston, you do have a problem. And this is where it is. And this now does warrant you spending some bucks and going out and getting much further in-depth professional level testing. Because, if you're dealing with special needs, professional level testing, and when I say professional level testing, I'm talking about PhD level, psychological neuropsych testing, as well as individual testing in different therapeutic areas, is critically important. Because if you as a parent don't know the specific areas of deficit, then you're not going to know where you need to focus. You're not going to know exactly how you might need to change up your teaching style to meet the needs of your child. Also, your child may need to have some type of testing accommodations in order to successfully demonstrate knowledge of material learned for standardized testing purposes. In New York State, as well as in many other states in this country, in order to get legal testing accommodations for standardized tests, you have have to have some level of psychological testing done that backs up the needs for those accommodations. And it's really important, if a child's got ongoing struggles, that the parents get that testing done, because flash forward, now you're in high school, you're getting ready to leave high school and pursue college entry exams, civil service exams, other types of professional level examinations where your child may need to have accommodations. You've got to have it documented that they need it.
That's a good way to keep the Child Protective Services off your radar, right?
Yeah, it is, because, you know something, here's the thing, and I tell parents, put yourself in the virtual time machine. If you've got a child who you've been flying under the radar with, let's just say that child is now 7 years old, and they only have 2 or 3 words.
Yeah, that's a serious.
Okay, let's flash forward 10 years. If you've got a child who's got major speech and language issues, I can tell you one thing I know for sure. They're going to start getting more and more frustrated, and before you know it, you're going to have dents in your wall, because your child's going to get so frustrated, they're going to start physically acting out. And you're going to get to the point where you're going to get frustrated because you don't know how to help your child. Every child is different. For some kids, you may be teaching them sign language. For other kids, you may be doing sign language to a certain point, and then you may be having to get them onto some type of an augmentative communication device if that child is not verbal yet. For other kids, you may be able to stimulate that verbalization, and then all of a sudden you're going to get the floodgates that are going to open. You're not going to be able to shut them up. Here's the thing. Computers are incredibly wonderful resources, and a lot of these augmentative communication devices are lifesavers. But if a child has been able to show that they're able to verbalize and they have the ability to have language, you're not always going to have an internet connection. You're not always going to have a battery. You're not always going to have a computer in front of you. It's really, really important that a child be able to speak with their own voice if they're able to do that. And it's a parent who's going to be able to have the time to sit with that child one-on-one and stimulate that language. There are a lot of big problems that come with trying to put a picture exchange system, a PICC system, in front of a child who's minimally verbal. You've got comprehension challenges on top of that. Does this child understand all the different layers they have to drill down through to get to say what they need to say? And as you're trying to teach that child that, the level of frustration can go through the roof. We have to deal that with our own child. There's not always a picture for everything that's in your head.
That's true. Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors.
Hey Firestarters, this is Mark, producer of The Luminous Mind. If you're like me, the thought of going out to the store and shopping is enough to make you want to crawl in a hole and hide. If that's you, then do your shopping online through Amazon. Just go to theluminousmind.net, click on the Amazon link, and shop away. Also, most of the books and resources that Rebecca and her guests discuss can be found on our Amazon links as well. Again, if you're like me, you have already accidentally signed up for Amazon Prime. So most of those purchases should have free shipping as well. Good luck!
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Mary Fratianni, a loving education at home special needs coordinator. Like you said, they get frustrated when they can't communicate their needs and things like that. And so you need to meet that child where they're at.
That's right. And one of the problems I've seen time and time again, and it frustrates me, is I read behavioral assessments that are prepared by school districts for children who are on IEPs who they've given an iPad to for communication. Now, iPads are fantastic devices, and it's amazing what they can do. But here's the thing. You get a child who doesn't fully comprehend how to use one of those devices. They find that they just bang on it, and they make it make the sounds, and it gets everybody in the class giggling and having a great time. It stops the teacher from teaching, which is what the child wanted in the first place, because they're frustrated they can't answer the question because they don't understand what they're supposed to do. I've read things about children who will start licking the iPad because it immediately, you get bodily fluids exchange, it immediately stops what's going on in the classroom.
Wow.
I've had parents who've had their school districts ask them to homeschool their children.
Because of the disruption and stuff.
Because of the disruption.
Wow.
And it's everything from asking children to do things that they're not capable of doing, which is really what I see. I would say 99.9% of the time when I am reading an IEP and I look at the goals and the objectives that have been set for that child, there is an attached behavioral assessment to it. The behaviors are being driven by the fact that the child is being asked to do something they're not yet capable of doing. So what do? You need to get at the level where the child is at, build their confidence at that level, and then slowly but surely take them to the next level. And when you are able to do that, you will start to see a child progress. But if you start to ask a child to do what they are not capable of doing, your child is going to immediately shut down, and then you're going to get frustrated.
Yeah, like you said, that's when the behavioral problems come out. So
exactly right.
And that's just another signal. That's their way of communicating to you. You just have to know how to pick up on those cues, right?
Yeah, that's right. And really, one of the books that I feel is extremely important that I recommend to a lot of parents it's called Treating Explosive Kids. And it's a collaborative problem-solving approach. It's by Ross Green and J. Stewart Avalon. It's definitely written at a clinical level. It's one thing if you read the book, and it's another thing to take it and use it. And the parents who are able to take the information they provide in that book and use it can really go places with their kids, because it's the first time that these kids see that somebody does recognize something's really frustrating me right now, and they're going to help me find the right road to solve my problem, because I'm really frustrated right now and I don't know which road to go down. And a parent is going to have the time and is going to have, more importantly, the love to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Well, so that kind of leads me back to one of my beginning comments. I kind of, in your opinion and your experience and your opinion, tell me why you think homeschooling is maybe a better option for somebody with a child with special needs. Some of the parents, they're looking at the difficulties that they have with that child, just how, physically exhausting it may be, but tell them what they can bring to the table for that child that they couldn't get kind of in a public school system.
Well, first of all families come in all different sizes and numbers of children. First of all, what the parent brings to the table is, number one, it's their child. They've got a vested interest in the outcome. There is nobody who's going to love that child, have as much patience with the child that is needed than that parent. Now, there are some parents and children who butt heads no matter what. And sometimes...
And that could be parents, special needs or not. I mean, really.
Yeah, special needs or not. And sometimes when that is the case, it actually behooves a parent to have that child be homeschooled by another individual. And there have been families around the state where a parent it's just not working out with their kid, and they've been able to find other parents or other professionals who have been able to step in and do that schooling for their child. What the parent brings the child to the table are this. Number one, there are many resources. The parent is not alone. Number one, if the parent chooses to get services through the school district, they have the ability to use that particular professional to help them in giving them activities to do at home with their child. And I do recommend parents try and make sure that if their child is on an IEP, that they request a once-a-month consult with each of their child's therapists. And that way, that gives them the ability to sit with that therapist and have that therapist, go through, okay, these are the things you can do at home. Because here's the thing, it's a high frequency of activities for a very short duration. The more you do something, the quicker you master it. So that's number one. Number two, parents should, if they're in New York State and they've got a special needs child, they should absolutely consider joining LEAH, because the Parents Instructing Challenged Children has a lending library available to LEAH members has lots of different therapy items, manuals that can help a parent. Homeschool Legal Defense Association, they have incredible struggling learner web pages with lots of resources. Very important that the parents structure their day and they have a game plan that they follow each day, that they have a set of activities that they are going to be doing to help their child, and intersperse those amongst the subjects that they have to teach. You know, the understanding that each child is going to progress at their own rate, and there's nothing that says your kid has to graduate by age 18. Many of the kids are graduated out when they're 21, and then there's some that are, you know, maybe continuing till they're age 25. Nowhere is it written in stone that your kid has to be done by a certain age.
Yeah, we all develop at different stages, no matter, you know, what special needs may be going on.
Absolutely. And this goes back to the whole testing thing. It is extremely important if your child has got, you know, whether it be a brain tumor, a genetic condition, or whatever it may be, that you work with. If you get testing done by a private professional, you got to understand that private professional, when they do testing and they're sitting down with you, they're not going to put rose-colored glasses on your face. They're going to tell you the way it is. And it is very important that parents have realistic expectations. Yes, we all want our children to reach their highest potential. And we want our children to be able to, you know, once they graduate, go on to either college or vocational school or do whatever it is and be as independent as possible. But there are some inherent issues that come depending upon where your kid is on the special needs spectrum that will adjust a parent's expectations. And they have to adjust the parent's expectation because, you know, and I'm going to use a case where if you've got someone who's got a traumatic brain injury, okay, where they just do not have the level of common sense that's needed to be able to live independently and care for themselves without having a guardian. And that is the case for many individuals. For some individuals, not. But it's expectations that a parent has. They're so critically important in just the basis of teaching each and every year. You can accommodate your child. You can adjust your teaching approach. These are all things that the public school cannot do. They can make certain accommodations, but they can't determine what is appropriate and when it's appropriate to teach your child. And I'm just going to jump here into the whole area of sex education, okay?
Yeah.
If you've got Christian homeschool families, there are certain things that certain families have certain morals and values and they hold true to them. And, you know, we live in America. Every person has an individual right. But the reality dictates with certain special needs kids, what you teach, when you teach it, and how you teach it really needs to be addressed by the parent.
No, very individual.
Because once I've seen this with with Common Core, and as the standards and what is taught at different levels is going down lower and lower and lower. Here's the thing. Once something goes in, it's in. You're not going to get it out again.
So be mindful of that when you're sending your children off. Yeah.
Absolutely. Parents need to be very, very mindful. And here again, they need to look at their individual child, because what's right for my child may not be right for your child. What's right for your child may not be right for mine. And that's where a parent's discernment is so critical.
Yeah.
The other thing we offer as part of PICC is we have a confidential online Yahoo chat group that our parents can join. And what makes PICC so powerful is it's the parents that make it up, because we've got veteran homeschoolers who have homeschooled multiple children with special needs. And, you know, I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I can't walk in the shoes of somebody who's got a child who's rocking back and forth in the corner with their hands over their ears.
Yeah.
Whereas we've got other parents on the group who are dealing with that. You know, we've got parents on the group who have taken kids with multiple special needs all the way up through college and graduated college. And they have lots of information to share with other parents when it comes to SAT and ACT prep and what's going on with the changes with Common Core and how that's affecting the kids. Also, how do you take a kid who has graduated from homeschool? They've done online college, and now they want to transition to residence on site at the college. How does that affect the whole mix? What supports does that child need now as being an adult with special needs on a college campus? So there's just the real power behind special needs homeschoolers are the parents that make it up. And the same thing goes for, as I had mentioned, Nathan out where you are in Idaho. The parents that are part of that, they've taken the responsibility for the ultimate outcome of their children upon themselves, and they've really been able to accomplish some fantastic things.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, I'm kind of going back to one of your previous comments that as a parent, you're not just throwing a report in the file, however their behavior is. You have to deal with it every day. And I think having to deal with that, as difficult as it may be, helps children get through it quicker. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, when you're homeschooling does not stop when you walk out your front door. And I really, really love to use this as a perfect example. And really, there's no age that's too young to start doing this. Once a child is able to follow your directions, as simple of a thing as going into the grocery store and taking a couple items on the grocery list. A child has to be able to walk, not run, down the aisles to find the food. Then, what happens if somebody's blocking them? Do they push through and push the little old lady or the little old man into the display to get through? Or do they say, "Excuse me, may I please get by?" Yeah,
those are definitely things moms and families think of more than a school might.
Yeah, I mean, most people who have children who don't have special needs, they just take it for granted that the kids are observing that this is just, it just comes standard equipment. The kids know how to do it. But many of these kids with special needs, you have to literally take them through those individual steps, and you need to model. And the social skills are such a huge piece of this. And many of these kids, when they get pulled out of the public school system, they are broken. They are so destroyed. And these parents are having to literally pick up the pieces and put these kids back together again. And so not only are we having to heal these children, but we're having to teach them appropriate behavior.
Wow.
One of the huge problems that I see happening is a lot of these kids get dumped into group therapies. And many of the kids in group therapies, they all have similar problems. So they all have behavior problems. And then these kids take these behavioral problems home.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that.
And so a lot of times parents are having to undo bad things, and they're having to teach what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. They can't just assume it's in there.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that. The social norm, situation, that is an extra advantage that a parent at home would have, because I have never heard of any type of school actually working on social norms. Is that true?
Well, the thing is, sometimes schools will offer social groups, and they may be monitored by the school psychologist or a clinical social worker. But here's the thing. As a parent, you are barred from going in there because there are other children. And that's whenever, even if your child was in group therapy, you're barred from going in there because of, HIPAA regulations. And the thing is I was offered way back when a social group for my child. And I said, well, I want to know what are they going to be discussing in there? Well, we can't tell you that. And I said, well, I don't know then if that's appropriate for my particular child. Yeah. Because, what they may be discussing, what may come up from or out of another child's mouth, I may not consider appropriate. And you can call me a helicopter or controlling parent. You can call me whatever you want.
But when, like you said, when you're dealing with a child with special needs, you don't want to introduce topics kind of too soon for their developmental stage, right? That's not helicopter. That's common sense.
It is common sense, and we've had discussions, and I truly do feel that these are topics that, a parent should be working with a private, consultant or what have you, because every child is different, and the information that you share with the child, some children can handle more than others. It's a very individual thing, but I really truly feel that really, yes, our children need to be educated, and especially about what's going on with sex education and et cetera. But you need to know your child's mental capability. That's a huge piece of it that factors in. The other thing that parents really need to be aware of is, yes, the system dictates what you are required to teach. Okay. You got to understand the social piece of this. These children, when you bring them into homeschooling and you're going to attend homeschool functions with other homeschoolers, if you're dealing with families who don't have children with special needs, you can't expect them to understand your child or your child's behaviors. Yeah. Many times a homeschool environment where your child is going to be doing stuff with other homeschool children is a safer environment than a public school, because you're not going to have the kind of bullying that goes on for the most part. This is from what I've experienced. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be groups out there where there's bullying going on, but from my experience in dealing with the groups that I've had, in general, the homeschool outings, whether they be field trips or co-ops, are generally they're safer environments. And the big, huge bonus for this for parents is this: because it's a safer environment, it gives you all the more opportunity to teach your child social skills. And if they do make a blunder, it's not going to blow up in their face.
Yeah, but it's really important to let the other parents know too, because I was teaching basketball to some kids, and I didn't realize that one of the children had, when he saw very black and white, and so when there was like a little bit of a discretion, when he didn't think that we were following the rules or whatever, he just freaked out, and I didn't understand that, and of course all the kids are nice and stuff, but we were all just like, what's going on with this child? And come to find out, he had something like that.
Yeah, you beat me to what I was going to say next. One of the things that I always tell parents is, first and foremost, if you are going to be participating in a homeschool co-op or going to be at some other, whether it be, let's just say you have a homeschool soccer team, when you're dealing with other parents, whether they're just parents who are just coming to watch or the teacher or whoever's responsible, you need to let them be aware of what your child's issues are up front. Because the thing is that, and also you need to make sure that you are present, because it is not fair to that other individual to be able to know how to deal with your child.
Yeah. When they're throwing a tantrum on the floor and you're like,
Absolutely. And the thing is that the other thing is that if your child tends to engage in behavior that is disruptive, okay, even if you said to the person who is, running the co-op or what have you, said, look, my child has, a tendency to do this, that, or the other thing, I'm going to remain here. If my child does have a breakdown, I will remove my child. Because here's the thing. If that child breaks down and starts disrupting everything, it disrupts the entire class for everybody. And other parents don't want to have their kids picking up bad behaviors from your child.
Yeah.
The other thing I tell parents is you use this situation to teach your child what is acceptable and what is not. So in other words, if your child starts to get frustrated before you even go to that class, you say to the child, look, this is what the acceptable behavior is. These are the rules of engagement. If I see you start to do whatever it is, you will get one warning. If I see it again, we leave. And the parent has to
follow up on that.
Follow up and be consistent every single solitary time. Because when a parent is not consistent with carry through, whether it be discipline in the home, discipline outside of the home, what have you, it is like a child being tossed in a sailboat on the sea with no one steering the boat. And you are causing more trouble for yourself by not being consistent.
Yeah, that's a really big key, right?
Absolutely. The minute a child sees that there is consistency, they learn, okay, mom's serious. I know that if I'm getting frustrated, I need to, and I tell the parent, you need to give the child some options. If the child's starting to get frustrated, they need to say, okay, I need to be excused, maybe sit outside for 5 minutes and then come back in. Or I need to learn how to raise my hand and ask for clarification. I don't understand. Whatever it is, number one, the parent has to be consistent with the follow through. The child has to be taught the rules of engagement, and they have to understand if they break those, there are going to be consequences. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
As an adult, you can't go, if you disagree with your boss, blow up and start throwing computers around the office. You're going to be fired.
Yeah. So before we say goodbye, do you want to give some final words of encouragement to parents, and then give us your contact information of how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, final words of encouragement. Number one, don't get out of bed without praying first. And second, follow your gut. And that goes with everything from your interactions with your child's doctor to your gut in what you see in your child's current educational placement. And then lastly, don't give up on your child, because they are unique and wonderful creations of God. And, he gave you this special child, and he will help you get through it. And there are many resources out there that can help you along the way. So, if parents want to get in contact with, if they're in New York State and they'd like to become able to access Parents Instructing Challenged Children LEAH, they should go to the leah.org website. And if they go to the About tab and go down to membership, they will find their particular region of New York State and the contact information for their LEAH regional representative. And they can get information on either how to join their local LEAH chapter, or if they're in a very rural area of New York State, or if they have a child who's not really ready to participate in a local chapter, they can just join LEAH at large, which just allows them to be a member of LEAH, just not within a local group. And then they can, later join a local group if they wish. They can have their membership transferred over. And once they're a member of LEAH, or if they're already a member of LEAH, if they want to contact Parents Instructing Challenged Children, they can go to the Special Needs tab and go down to Contact PICC, and there's a email link that will go to PICC. It's PICC at nysleah.org. We also have an office number, which is 1-866-960-9440, extension 3. And, once they make contact, their membership is verified, and then we can send them out a support and resources packet that gives them information about all that is offered through Parents Instructing Challenged Children LEAH. I also wanted to mention is on the Special Needs web pages on the LEAH website, there's PICC resources, which are resources that parents who are homeschooling special needs children anywhere in this country could benefit from outside educational consultants to adaptive equipment to special needs curriculum, speech language resources, stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely not an exhaustive list, but we've tried to put up some good nuts and bolts up there to help parents.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be sure to attach all of that information that you talked about in your show notes so that our audience can have access to that. And I just so grateful for your time. I know this is one area where parents may not feel as prepared to do, but I think that you've given them a lot of encouragement to know that they have that ability. So thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Mary Fratianni, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and consider joining our program by going to the scheduling tab to become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website. Also, sign up to receive 2 free audiobooks from Audible at theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+, and now Pinterest. Get our audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider telling your friends about us. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.